Hey, welcome back to the Leader Roots podcast. My name is Stephen Smallwood. I wanted to do a little something different today, maybe a little lengthy, but I thought it was important that I genuinely just introduce myself and why am I even doing this stuff, getting into this podcast world. Well, first of all, I want you to let you know that, guys, there are three quotes that have really impacted me on my journey, especially in the latter years of my adult life. And I want to share those quotes with you first. And then after sharing those quotes, we'll get into maybe my journey, talk a little bit about who I am, where I came from, all this other kind of stuff. So the first quote that I wanted to share comes from Dr. Miles Monroe, the late Dr. Miles Monroe. And he was looking at the book of Ecclesiastes and looking at there's a time to live, a time to die, there in chapter 3, a time to plant, a time to pluck up what's been planted. But the one thing that he said that was really interesting concerning that, he said, if life is measured in terms of time, then wasted time is life abuse. And I thought about that, and I thought about my life, and I thought about the energy that I put in life and the people's time that I took up. Am I bringing value to the time when I spend time with people? Because if it's a wasted conversation, I not only waste my time, but I waste their time too. And over my adult, especially past the 50s, I start really considering that when I'm engaging in conversation and others. And the other one that I thought was really important, that really impacted me, especially in my years as an HR business partner, it was from Leo Tolstoy. And Leo Tolstoy, the great Russian writer and author, said, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. And in an environment, especially corporate America, when there's always changes going on, guys, it's often that we want to see things better. But are we willing to make the changes necessary to be able to appreciate the things that we want to experience? And that's just not in corporate America. Guys, that's in your family. It's in relationships. It's in everything that we do. Everyone thinks of changing that thing, but are they willing to change themselves to be able to experience the thing that they're trying to change? And the other one is by Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of my favorite authors, and I've read so much of his material. But Ralph Waldo Emerson said something, and that was probably the last quote that really affected me, that I thought really made an impact in my life. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, it is one of the most beautiful compensations in life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself. And I thought that was really important in my life, especially as a HR business partner, which was what I found to be my work in this life, and that's helping other people. Even my years as a volunteer, a hospice volunteer for the 5 years that I was there, I believe that I got just as much out of helping those people, sitting with those people that was dying. I got just as much out of it as they got with me sitting with them. Because I learned so much, and I'm sure throughout some of these podcasts, I'll get a chance to share some of those things that some of those people dying really helped me. Let me just give you one real quick. I would ask the men in particular, if you could do it all over again, what would you do different? And in almost every single case, in almost every, at least the way that they can express themselves, they would say, young man, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't sweat the small stuff. And when you find out you have 3 months to live, son, everything is small stuff. Well, after hearing that over and over again for 5 years, it gave me an opportunity to really start practicing making things small stuff so that I can live my life. So, since I've made this decision to go on this learning path, this journey of being the podcaster, I wanted to spend a few minutes on maybe a formal introduction of who I am, what took me on this journey, and some of the growth that I've learned since I've been here. So let's formally meet. My name is Stephen Smallwood, and I guess you heard that from the beginning. Hey, but when I grew up, they called me Stevie. I was just Stevie. And it's funny because whenever I was in the airport traveling, going through some of these countries I've gone to, so many states I've been to, when I hear somebody in the airport holler my name, hey, Stevie, I knew that it had to be somebody from Tulsa. Also, Okay, and so where did I grow up? Um, I was born in a large family in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Mother, father, 7 boys, 5 girls. Guys, big family. But it was so great. And even as a kid growing up, we lived on a corner lot. And my mother and father just, they were strict in the way that we were raised. At the same time, we talked about everything. I mean, it was a place that, on that corner, it was the place the kids in the neighborhood came and hung out. And I used to think that it was because it was just the street corner, it had a light on it, and everybody hung out. But as I got older, I realized that my mother and father gave this sense of stability so that those kids that didn't have that stability at home or was being raised by a single parent, they would come around our environment, around our family, and just enjoy being with us. It was so much fun. We would invite them in to eat. Guys, you've been there, and a lot of you have experienced that. You know, just being that place where other kids, when you were growing up, just felt really happy about being around. I have one brother that have passed away about 9 years ago. And I think it's important to be just straightforward. He passed away of alcoholism. He got out of the Navy and alcohol became his friend. And many of you have had, I'm sure, people in your family that whether it's drugs or alcohol or whatever it is, it's something that they battled. And in this case, my brother lost the battle. In fact, I remember being the last one that took him to his last rehab. Great guy, great personality. We miss him so much. Now, so the youngest of my brothers right now is 52 years old. The oldest sister is 76. So you figure 11 siblings, youngest 52, oldest 76. Here's one thing that's really cool about it. Even right now today, we attempt, and we're pretty successful at it, we get together and have lunch every single month to laugh, to hang out, to find out what's going on and what is this world teaching us, this life journey, what's going on in your life. And guys, we have such fun because it doesn't matter, you know, how successful one of us was or how successful or how unsuccessful we were. We get a chance to come together and just be siblings, just like we were when we were growing up, teasing each other, acting up, the nuts that are in the family, right? Everybody has them, who just go to come together and just have a good time. That's what we do. We're looking forward to it every single month we get a chance to do that. Well, after high school, I had an opportunity to join the Navy. So I spent between regular Navy and reserve, I spent 20 years in the Navy and retired. Guys, it was a great experience. It was the traveling. Could you imagine at 18 years old, leaving Tulsa, Oklahoma, at 19 years old, building torpedoes in the military, traveling to Italy at 19 years old and hanging out and getting involved in doing a lot of things that you're not supposed to do. But it was a great experience, and I hope to eventually one day talk about some of those experiences with you and as part of this thing of sharing my life with you. Well, later on in life, I had an opportunity to join American Airlines, where I spent my first couple of years as a mechanic and then had an opportunity to go in management where I spent some time as a scheduler and a planner and guys had a chance to be a production supervisor with a great bunch of people, great men and women who really taught me a lot about not only the airline business, but about maintenance and how to work on these airplanes, these 757, 767, 777 aircraft. And I'll tell you, it's really interesting because the biggest compliment I think that I ever received doing that part of my journey with the company was from a young lady that I used to work next to as a mechanic. I remember when I became her production supervisor some years later, she called me over and she said, you know, Stephen, I just want to say thank you. And I said, well, what did I do, right? She said, you're the same guy that I work next to. She said, even though you're now my supervisor, now that you're a leader in this organization, you haven't changed. You're the same guy. Guys, it was the biggest compliment I could have ever received. And the reason is because so many people, they get promoted within their companies and they change. They become something that they're not. I was able to maintain who I was, and I thank God for that. I think just my genuine love and care for people to be able to just maintain and realize that even though the positions change, you shouldn't change. So it's really pretty cool. And then some years later, I got a phone call, and it was from a guy who said, Stephen, look, they're looking for HR at American Airlines, and they're looking for someone who has experience in the field, somebody that can relate to the people that they are going to be the HR partner over. And so I became an HR business partner and took the company and supported the company through the mergers and all of these other kind of things. I can tell you that of all the experiences that I've had, this right here was my calling. Guys, the HR business partner world was the place that I was supposed to be. And it just took that journey that I went through to get there. But it was a journey worth taking because when it was time to take on that responsibility, I had a lot of experience working with other people, both as a team member, as a leadership, in the leadership role. So I really had a great opportunity to build up those kind of things that was required to be a better HR business partner. And it's so crazy because about a year into my retirement, guys, I ran across this quote. 25 years with the company, I was enjoying my retirement, traveling, fishing, going all over the place, reading, writing, all of that stuff. But I ran across this quote, and the quote said, if you're not falling occasionally, you're just coasting. Well, I knew that I was just coasting. Again, the traveling, the fishing, the reading, the writing. But for some reason, through all of that, I wasn't being challenged. From coming out of the HR world and helping people navigate through their concerns and their issues, I just didn't feel like I was making a big difference. So I got up and started looking around, and I ran across Toastmasters International. And if you don't know about it, Toastmasters International is this company who's been around for a very long time that helps people with their presentation skills, help them with their speaking skills, help them with impromptu speaking, right? I mean, just being able to get up in front of a crowd and start a conversation or carry on a conversation, or when there's a gap between a presentation, what do you say and what do you do? Well, Toastmasters is a place that I became a part of, still a part of. I just recently became an area director in my area. So much to learn, still growing, still learning, and still excited about it. So that's what I've started doing. And this journey has been really a great journey. So it's been maybe a year and a half or so, 2 years into this journey, still growing. It's still learning so much. Guys, I'd recommend it to anybody. If you want to be a better speaker, if you want to be a better, if you want to even begin again in your career to do something different, whether you're part of a church organization or you're part of work or your organization just in your neighborhood, if you want to show up more from a leadership standpoint and enjoy some of the things that life has to offer from a leadership standpoint, Toastmasters International is really the place to be. Okay, you guys have that plug, Toastmasters. And then about 6 months, 7 months into that journey, I get this phone call from a friend that I worked with at American Airlines. His name is Chris Appleton. He gave me a call and he said, Stephen, just want to talk to you a minute. I'm starting this new media company called Leadership One Media, and I want you to be a part of it. So we sat down and we talked about the dynamics of it. He was so excited about some of the things that he wanted to do, the journey that he was going on. And I looked forward to being a part of something because remember, I was still not following enough. And even though Toastmasters was really working on me, I could definitely have picked something else up. And Chris Appleton gave me a chance to do that. So I signed up to do 24 leadership podcasts. And so for the next 6 months, I spent time writing these podcasts, some long, some short, and then to find out that they all just needed to be just a few minutes long because it was just to give a taste of and to get a chance to start getting experience at this podcast game. So I did sign up with Chris and I got 24 recorded. And that was my first stab at the podcast game. And so all guys, I'm also learning so much, just so much to learn in this game. You know, you see somebody who's a podcaster and you think, my goodness, they're just flowing with this stuff. But I'm sure it wasn't always that way. And because this journey that I'm on, I'm telling you, there is a lot to learn. And I'm learning. I have so many mentors that are online. I'm learning about eye contact and looking at the camera and how do you make a person feel on the other side and how do you reach them through the screen. And on and on, there's so much to learn about this business. But because I'm committed to it now, I plan to learn it and plan to get better at it as the months, as the years go on so that I can make a difference. I used to think that maybe I didn't have anything or at least enough to share. I thought maybe, I thought, what am I going to talk about? And then I start writing and looking at my past, looking at my experience in the Navy, looking at my experience with Pitney Bowes, the 10 years I was there before American Airlines, looking at the time that I was self-employed for a year after leaving Pitney Bowes and the experiences that I learned there. I realized that I have a whole lot to give, and it just took some time of writing some things down so that I can figure this stuff out. So it's really pretty cool. Guys, I think one of the hardest things though, one of the hardest things of all this learning that I'm finding out is learning to come to grips with not comparing myself to everybody else, right? I mean, so whether you're a singer or a writer or podcaster, we have this tendency as humans to compare where we are today to where everybody is now without realizing that some of these people have been doing what they've been doing for years. But you still have to fight that. Stop comparing yourself. You're not that good yet, and it's okay. Maybe one day. But it's a fight that I have to keep reminding myself as I go through this process. Otherwise, you'd want to give up because you compare yourself and figure, my goodness, they're so far ahead of me. How am I? Well, that's their journey. It was important for me to realize, and again, I still have to remind myself, guys, so I had to remind myself that this is my journey. And so especially for those who's been in the game for years, guys, you know what it takes to get to where you are. When you look at some of your old stuff, you think, my goodness, that was me then. I know that sometimes I listen to Myron Golden and I've seen some of his old YouTube videos and I thought, my goodness, this is a polished dude now. But when you look at his first beginnings, guys, he talks about things like, he was a sex overnight. But that night was like 14 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. It took time to get to where he is. So as long as I keep reminding myself of that, I've had two successful careers, retired Navy, retired American Airlines, 25 years. So I have some things under my belt. So this is something new. And I was talking to one of the VPs at American Airlines when I was visiting the other day. And I said, my goodness, this stuff is hard. He said, Stephen, yeah, it is. He said, everything's hard when you first start, isn't it? And I was reminded again, everything is hard when you first start, but you shouldn't quit. We just keep on doing it until we get better at it. So the other thing that it's important for me is because I am a follower of Jesus Christ, I am a citizen of two kingdoms. I'm a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, and I'm a citizen of the United States. So I know that it's important for me to not compare myself to other people that are out there walking their journey, doing their thing, because some of them are going in roads that I'm not allowed to go in, or roads that I would be very uncomfortable to go in. So then my goal is not to do what they do to get the followers that they have. Part of my goal and part of my challenge is to be authentically me, to make sure that I can walk the road of a citizen of both kingdoms, the United States and the kingdom of heaven. So there's just a lot of things that you should never hear me say. There's a lot of things you should never hear me do if I'm going to be authentic, if I'm going to be myself. So it's important for me on this journey to stay focused, stay focused, stay focused, stay focused, to just be me. And if the journey takes years, if the journey takes months, that's the other thing I have to remember. That there's no there in the sense that where are you going with this? And that I need to really get into the journey. I'll tell you, I had a life coach a couple of years ago, and I explained to her that this struggle about podcasting, and one day I'm going to get better at this stuff. And she said something that was really important and something that stuck with me. She said, Stephen, listen. She said, everybody is on a journey, and there are some people who are on the same journey that you're on. And if you have something important to say, something that's going to benefit them, you will reach somebody at that level of the journey they're on. So you don't just stop working on it just because you're trying to reach maybe somebody who may not even be interested. And I'll even tell you, guys, if you've got something that you have to say, something that you want to say, something that you've experienced, something that have helped you in life, how dare you keep that stuff to yourself? There are people out there who need what you are dealing with. They need what you've experienced. They need your successes. There's no one that have walked the road that you've walked, that have experienced the things that you've experienced. You can help them, and they're looking forward to hearing your voice. So I just want to encourage you too, that if there's something that you've got to put out there, guys, take the time to put it out there. There's somebody who needs to hear you. So the other thing that I'm dealing with, kind of, I think it's important to share just one of the many struggles that I have. I mentioned the one of comparing and being authentic. But for me personally, one of the things I struggle with is managing my discretionary time. And what do I mean by that? You know, I still have this tendency, like many people, to spend so much time, watching reels on YouTube, which are funny and entertaining and all of these other kind of stuff. And I do watch some that's entertaining as well. But politics, my goodness, in this environment that we're in right now, I seem to get sucked in with all of this political stuff going on, even to the point where, I'll tell you, a few days ago, there was a couple of nights that I didn't sleep well because I'd heard something and I just couldn't get it out of my head. Something crazy that's going on in our world today, crazy going on here in the United States that could potentially affect me and me personally. So I'm still working on those things to not get so involved. Yeah, glance at it, know what's going on, but not to the point where it's sucking up an hour, 2 hours of your day. That's discretionary time that I could be using, learning how to podcast, listening to other podcasters, learning how to do this business, and just growing to be a better version of myself. That stuff that sometimes get me caught up in the discretionary time could be benefiting me, helping me to grow, and helping me to do things to help you even better. So I'm still working on my discretionary time, still trying to fight not getting so caught up in this stuff that it's taken away from the things that I'm trying to do. And I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Guys, there's so much going on around us, and you have so much to offer this world. So I encourage you too to get on this journey of stop letting social media and stop letting the reels and just being entertained when you have so much to bring to this world. It's really important too, because often we're at work and we do the things at work, and when there's discretionary time, even at work, we have a tendency to play instead of to be doing something that's going to make us better. I had a chance to talk to a group the other day, and I shared with them some of the mistakes I made when I was early in the company. And that was, dude, partying and having a good time without thinking about, what if something happens to my job? What if something happens that I have to look for something else? Am I preparing myself, or am I depending on this one place for the rest of my life? We need to start thinking about that, because one day we will be faced with making that decision of, what am I going to do? Wouldn't it be important to use your discretionary time to learn that trade, something new, that skill set, something that you've always wanted to do. And if money wasn't an option, it's funny, when you ask somebody even today, you say, if money wasn't an option, what would you be doing? Most people wouldn't have a clue because most of us are so caught up in our jobs, so caught up in what we're doing right now that we really haven't taken the time to think about what we would do if money wasn't an issue. Something that we need to think about. So I just want to encourage you, during your discretionary time, during those times that you're driving, are you just being entertained? Or are you learning something that's going to help you, that's going to benefit you? Okay, the other thing I wanted to share is my long-term goal with this podcast journey is to eventually get enough following where I can invite other professionals on, other leaders, HR professionals, leaders with other organizations to get on and to talk about what's going on in the workplace and to get some really thought people that's coming in that's have the big thinking, right? I mean, so AI is coming in, and AI, guys, I'm telling you, if you don't get on board with this AI, you're going to be left behind. Learn some of the stuff that's out there, that's available. You never know that when you leave the place that you are right now, you don't realize just how much you may need to know this AI, and it may be the difference between getting that next job or not, starting that next company or not. So let me encourage you. Don't be afraid of AI. Get involved. Find out what it's all about, at least all the tools that are out there today. So long term, I want to get some people in where you can call in, where you can ask some questions to help you grow. It'll give me an opportunity to learn a whole lot of things that I don't know, some things that I need to learn. And I am a life student. And I'll tell you, I remember seeing a podcast or a TED Talk, I think it was, and the lady was talking about the 11 rules to communication. And she said, the number one rule is to enter every conversation as if you have something to learn, because everybody can teach you something. And that's true. And I got some stories from a junior achievement where a second grader corrected me on something and he was right and the documentation I was going by was wrong. So I'll never challenge another second grader, not that kind of way. So anyway, guys, I want to say thank you for joining me on this journey as I'm learning all of this stuff. And it's my hope that as I get better at this, I can bring something that's going to benefit you, some things that's going to help you on your journey, both at work and your journey just in your everyday walk. I just believe that all of us have something that we can share with all of us that's going to help us be a better version of yourself. And I'm happy to get an opportunity to be a part of that journey. So thanks for joining me on this podcast. And guys, we'll see you on the next episode. And I'll do my best and continue to learn, continue to grow, and hopefully start bringing you some more stuff that's going to be able to help you in your walk. And we'll talk to you later.